Hi, this is Tom, November 8, Foxtrot Delta Yankee, and today we're going to talk about how to choose a radio. Let's get the disclaimers out of the way. I am not going to tell you what radio to buy. I could tell you, but you probably wouldn't like it because it'd be the radio I like. All hams have biases, positive or negative, towards a manufacturer or a particular radio, including me, so I'm going to tell you those later. Keep that in mind when hams give you advice of what radio to buy. To find the best radio for you, you're going to have to do the work. And remember, if this is not your first radio, consider improving your antenna before you upgrade your radio, because an improved antenna will make a much bigger difference than an improved radio. I mentioned everybody has a bias, and so do I. And here's my biases. I'm mostly an ICOM guy, and I do like some Yaesu stuff, as you can see by what radios I have now. We're happy with these radios. If we weren't, we'd have other ones. Well, now that you know where I'm coming from, let's get into what we're going to talk about. First, you got to answer some questions before you look into a new radio. The second thing is we'll talk about the type of radios. Then we'll talk about how to evaluate your choices. And then we're going to talk about how to get hands-on with your short list. Then we'll talk about where to buy radios. And then we're going to speed through the list of radios, typical new and typical used radios and their prices. Don't take this as an endorsement of any of those radios, but I just want to give you an idea of what's out there. And there's way more than what I have here. The crucial questions you need to answer is how much money can you spend? That's very important that you know exactly how much money you can spend and you stick to your budget. Because it's very easy to look at radios and go, oh, if I only spent $100 more, or if I only spend $1,000 more, only if I spend $5,000 more, I could get such a better radio. Well, it's not really worth it. Stick to your budget. Then you have to figure out what do you want the radio to do. And that's the hard part, is matching what do you want it to do to how much you want to pay for it. Then next, you have to figure out if this fits into your current station, or if you're doing a new station, how that fits into what you want to plan to do. Well, this again will show my bias, but this is how I rate the current manufacturers. If you're a newbie, I would stick with the big three: ICOM, Kenwood, Yaesu. There's also Linco. All these four companies are Japanese companies. They've been making stuff for a long time. There's the boutique manufacturers, which coincidentally are all United States-based, is Elecraft, Flex Radio, and Tentec. And a lot of people like those radios. They are pricey. And there's also the esoteric radios, especially people who like STRs, go for an on and for a lad. Then there's a lot of people who recommend the Chinese radios, and I do not recommend that. I would stay away from them because of quality control issues and getting parts. But one of the three popular ones I know of are the Bofang, Xiegu, and the Anytone. Well, first we'll talk about the types of VHF, UHF radios. Most people are familiar with the handheld transceivers, or HTs as we call them. And the most popular kind are the analog only, usually used for point-to-point communications or with analog repeaters. And it's mostly geared towards local communications. Then you have the digital-enabled HTs, which can talk to repeaters that have systems set up where you can communicate with people all over the world. And a lot of hams enjoy this, and they think it's worth the extra money to be able to carry on conversations with people in Europe, Japan, and Australia, and all over the place. There's also mobile radios, some of which are primarily FM, but others can do digital. And there's a big variety of those, and a lot of people like to put those in their car and enjoy amateur radio from their vehicle. Then there's some people who want a base station in their house. And what I've found is it's more economical to just buy a mobile radio and set it up in your house rather than spend the money on the high-end satellite and DX radios. But if you want to do satellite and DX, then that's definitely look into those radios. Now, if you have a general class license or above, you'll be interested in HF radios. If you're a technician, you may want to do 10 meters, so you'd be interested in HF also. There's portable radios, mostly QRP or low power, and those are used for people who like to go do the mountaintop and use parks and go all around to do contacts. And there's a wide variety of these radios. Then there's the mobile radios that you can put in your car and run HF from your car. Then there's the base station, and I've broken those up into entry level, sort of the mainstream, and then the high end. I'm not going to really talk about the high end at all, but the entry level is probably where you want to start. And after you had your radio for a while and you learn what you like and don't like, you may want to move into the mainstream, or you may be perfectly happy with the entry level for the rest of your ham experience. To evaluate your radio choices, there's lots of resources on the internet. The first one I'd look at is QST Magazine. They have a listing by manufacturer of all their reviews that are available as PDF downloads. The only caution is that remember that all these manufacturers advertise in QST Magazine, so there really isn't going to be very much negative in the review. eHam is another source, and it's user reviews. And again, there's always the caution about user reviews, but it gives you a good idea how popular radio is by how many people review it, and you kind of get a good idea of the radio based on the ratings. They have a 1 to 5 system for ratings, and you can read the details of each user's opinion. Another great place to look is YouTube. Just go to the search bar and put in the model number of the radio, and you'll find videos from all over the world, either demoing the radio or reviewing the radio or comparing the radio to some other radio. You could spend hours watching those. A great place once COVID's over would be Hamvention, and it is in Ohio, and it's pretty easy to get to. I highly recommend that go to Hamvention once they start having them again. And another place, once the COVID shutdown is over, is DX Engineering. It's about an hour drive away from Cleveland, and they have a nice little showroom and lots of radios set up there, and they have friendly, helpful people that work there that are all hams, so they can help you look at the radios. Once you have your short list, you're going to need to get hands-on. And one of the ways you can do that is to find a local ham who has one of the radios you're interested in and ask them for a demo. And you know, most hams would love to demo their equipment, and you can get a really good feeling for how the radio works. And they'll probably let you run the radio and make a few contacts. Another way that I've already mentioned in the previous slide is to visit a store or go to a ham fest and get hands-on with the radio. Some hams, and I've actually sold a radio to one of these hams, they basically will buy and sell used gear until they find the thing they like. And that is one way to do it. You certainly get plenty of hands-on. You can buy your ham gear at DX Engineering, which has new equipment, a ham radio outlet, which has new and used. Of course, they'd be mail order since they're not near us. There's R&L Electronics, which has new and used. They're in Columbus. Once Hamvention starts up, there's plenty of things to buy there, new and used. And for used, there's QRZ, Online Swap Meet, and there's eBay. I've used all of these to buy ham gear, and it's mostly worked out. Let's take a look at some typical new equipment available. First, we'll start out with the handheld transceivers, or HT as we like to call them. Here there's 3 entry level, ranging from $75 to $120, and they do 2 meters and 70 centimeters, strictly FM, no digital. Now we have the HTs that do digital. They range from $175 to $220. The first one does C4FM, works with the NOARS repeaters, and the other 2 are DMR radios, which some hams find useful and like. Now for mobile, there's a wide choice, but I just picked typical 3. and they range from 270 to 460. And as you can see, the most expensive one has the C4FM digital modes. For a VHF UHF base station, I recommend, if you're just going to do FM, use a mobile radio. But if you're going to get into satellites or single sideband DXing, then pretty much the radio to go for this ICOM radio. Now, if you're going to do portable HF, there's a very wide variety of portable HF, ranging from the Zygu, which is about $450, all the way up to the top of the line Elecraft KX3, which is a lot of money. And the middle one is the brand new ICOM that was just announced. If you want to do HF mobile, there's a nice Yaesu, or you could go with the ICOM that has VHF and UHF besides the HF. For new HF base station entry-level models, I picked 3 that represent a good selection. The IC718 is the simplest and most economical radio. Then the IC7300 SDR, which is entry-level, and it has a pretty good price for SDR radio. Also, the Yaesu is an interesting radio because it's a similar price to the 7300, but it's traditional analog, but it also has 2 meters and 70 centimeters. I've included this intermediate radio category for people who want to step up or are more interested in competition and DXing. This has a traditional analog radio. Next radio, the Yaesu, is very interesting. It's brand new, and it's a hybrid SDR. It's Yaesu's take on how to do SDRs, and Sherwood Engineering rates this as number 3 in receiver performance. Third radio is a more traditional analog radio. Now, for the serious contester and DXer, there's the ICOM 7610, which is a straight SDR. Then again, their Yaesu has their hybrid SDR, and this is rated as number 1 on the Sherwood Engineering list, which is very interesting because it beats the Flex and it beats the Elecraft, which both used to be number 1s. Kenwood's entry, which is a more traditional analog radio, but it does have spectrum scope. Now we'll get into some sample used gear. First, we'll start out with the HTs. The interesting thing about this list is many of these are tri-banders, and usually there's not that many new tri-banders around. There's also a wide variety of used mobile VHF UHF gear. And again, here's just a little sampling. Now we have some sample used HF gear. The first item is ICOM's Shack in the Box, which they no longer make. Then there's the popular TS2000, which is another Shack in a Box. And then there's the FT857D, which is a popular mobile rig that's a Shack in a Box. And I've also listed 2 current models that are being sold used. And the interesting thing about IC718 is that some people pay more for it used than they do new. But that's mostly because it comes bundled with things when they sell it used. And of course, for the boat anchor lovers of us, there's the used vintage HF. And that can get pricey for what it is. There is 2 examples, the Drake line, which is made in Ohio, and then there's the Collins line, which was considered the Cadillac of the ham radio at its time. So I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this, and if you need any help with any of this or have any questions, let me know. This is Tom, November 8, Foxtrot Delta Yankee.